was how the poet said dirt, or maybe it was how he used fire to describe the trees. So that one little image put in there in contrast to the poetry, it's like that little, like that mine going off, that bomb going off inside of us. We feel that, and 40 years later, the impact of that war that still goes on. So I would like to read one of my own poems that's a commentary on another kind of social justice, which is class differences, status differences, not as easily visible as some of the others. But I think this is something people can relate to, and it's about not belonging, not fitting in, being marginalized or feeling invisible. So even as a white woman, I write this poem, and in the middle of it, I do then bring in the Native American experience of, not belonging, not fitting in now to this current culture and being left out. And I wrote this poem right after the pandemic started, and a writing group that I was in, that I've been in for many years actually, we started to meet on Zoom. And so there was a shift from being in person, and that distance of sitting back in Zoom allowed me to listen and to sense something different about difference between myself and some of the women in the group. So it's called Social Distancing. Writing group gone digital from living room to screen. I feel invisible here in my little Zoom box. A distancing I recognize when I try to speak, but no one hears. And I drown in the bright patter of bread making and collage making, orders from Amazon for sanitizer and cute little socks. I swim in a sea of women who can afford remodels and facelifts, surgeries for their pedigreed pets, women who take vacations in Tuscany and Kyoto, Portugal and Paris, who have husbands and golden-haired grandchildren in Waldorf, IRAs and mortgages, stockbrokers and living trusts. Women who inhabit second homes on a lake, their own art studios and sunlit conservatories, spilling hours of lighthearted leisure into journals and watercolors and origami boats, while I keep my eye out for overdrafts and take a second job. I am invisible, wanting to be seen and not, wanting to speak, but I only scream the news inside my head. They are seizing ancestral lands from the Mashpee Wampanoag, who greeted the pilgrims with open hearts, and I can't pay my rent, and the XL black snake keeps swallowing the rivers of the Lakota, and they were all put into boarding schools for being too Indian, and now are not Indian enough to claim their own place on the earth. And I am not white enough to shelter in this place where I don't belong. I open my mouth to speak, but swallow salt water that stings my throat beneath this lying skin, cowers of wildness that will never fit in, wants to be seen, but is afraid it will lose its own soul to the namers and proclaimers, the swift of word, wants to have and to hold like the others, but keeps opening its hands to the waters of the sea, keeps giving back what can never be owned, keeps distancing from what it can never be. So again, in poetry, it's so possible to overlap these different causes and to feel our connection, even though we're different. I was feeling my connection to the Native Americans, and it was through this experience of not fitting in. So I would also like to share some poems from a category I call true empowerment poems, where the poets can tell a new story, helping people shift out of victimization into empowerment. It's not just um, to be able to relate or feel empathy, but to actually empower people and, and to bring in the qualities of resilience and hope and creativity. And oftentimes in the empowerment poems, there's anger being expressed, and in our culture, anger is sometimes not seen as so good, and yet anger is what is our power. It powers us toward action and towards protest and saying no. And actually, there's a very a poem here written by a Black woman named Rage, appropriately written. It's called Anger, on Anger, Rage Hezekiah. And she writes a story in her poem of being a Black woman, seeing a white therapist, dealing with her anger. And it's pretty clear from this poem that the therapist is trying to help her let go of her anger. And she's asking in this poem, do I really want to let go of my anger? What would that do? So, on Anger. My white therapist calls it my edge. I hear angry Black woman. She says strength of willful negative focus. She says acerbic intellectual temperament. I copy her words onto an index card. She wants an origin story, a stranger with his hand inside me, or worse. I'm without linear narrative and cannot sate her. We perform rituals on her living room floor. I burn letters brimming with resentments. Watch the paper ember in the fireplace. Admit, I don't want to let this go. What if anger, my armor, is embedded in the marrow of who I am? Who can I learn to be without it? Wherever you go, there you are. She asks, what will I lose if I surrender? I imagine a gutted fish, silvery skin gleaming, emptied of itself. A gutted fish, silvery skin gleaming, emptied of itself. Yeah, so in support of anger used in the right way. So little time left. Can I just go about 5 minutes over, Jim, since we started 5 minutes late?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. We've got the next one is taped anyway, and then I have to wait for Bruce to show up.
Okay. As I have a couple more poems here. Actually, I'm going to go into the next category, which kind of overlaps. It's empowering poems and also poems of encouragement, speaking to those who are protesting, who are asking for their rights, in poems being in support that inspire action and courage and endurance, hanging in there for the cause, and also help to actually dream up the new reality that we want to see happen. So I'm going to read one of mine that I wrote during the Water Protectors stand at Standing Rock, on the Lakota reservation of Standing Rock in 2016. And it was written very much as just an encouragement to the people taking that stand. And I know Jim Petruzzi was there. I wasn't able to go, but from my place here in California, I wanted to be a supporter. So it's called to the Water Protectors of Standing Rock. Stand like a rock and do not move. Stand for the earth and her precious waters, for the others don't know that everything is connected, and what affects one will soon affect all. Stand like a rock and do not move. Stand for your ancestors whose graves were destroyed. They have given their lives and their livelihoods, their land, and now must they give their dignity too? Stand like a rock and do not move, though they bring in their dogs and their mace and their machines of destruction. Stand proud in peace and show the world what warriors of the spirit can do without force. Stand like a rock and do not move. Stand in the heat and the rain and the winds, and if necessary, the snows. The elementals have come to back you up and to sing their songs of protest too. Stand like a rock and do not move. Your medicine is rising once again through these lands. May your bodies be like prayer arrows planted in the earth, proclaiming the sacredness of all life in all forms. Stand like a rock and do not move, and know you will not be standing alone. Your brothers and sisters all over the globe are gathering in circles to send prayers and blessings and standing with you in the solidarity of love. Stand like a rock and do not move. There is power in numbers, and the numbers will grow. The ancestors are returning, and they are wearing many colors of skin. Let this cause be a signal for the rainbow tribes to unite. We are all the ones we've been waiting for. Stand together like rocks and do not move. So yes, even though that poem was for those at Standing Rock, the warriors at Standing Rock, it's a, you know, could be applied to any cause, and is meant to bring strength and courage. So take another breath in between and just noticing and reflecting on the way imagery and metaphor can cut deep. So there's a very short one by Langston Hughes, who I mentioned, who was African-American. He passed in 1967, and he was writing during the civil rights movement and much earlier, obviously. This is one really kind of, you know, shifting into the future that we want to see, claiming our power. It's called I Too. Very short one. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. So that one simple little metaphor of being sent to eat in the kitchen and then not being sent to eat in the kitchen is this little thing he turns on the future, visioning the way we want it to be. And I think I'll just finish with one poem that is very much about using language to create the new vision. So it's not just stopping with protest and saying no to what we don't want, but the poet's role is a visionary, and all artists are. This one's by Denise Levertov, and it's called Making Peace. And just listen to how she uses all these words of language terms to talk about how we can craft what we want. We can craft this world of peace with our poetry. Making Peace. I need a sip of water first. A voice from the dark called out, "The poets must give us imagination of peace to oust the intense, familiar imagination of disaster. excuse me, peace, not only the absence of war, but peace, like a poem, is not there ahead of itself, can't be imagined before it is made, can't be known except in the words of its making, grammar of justice, syntax of mutual aid. A feeling towards it, dimly sensing a rhythm, is all we have until we begin to utter its metaphors, learning them as we speak. A line of peace might appear if we restructured the sentence our lives are making, revoked its reaffirmation of profit and power, questioned our needs, allowed long pauses. A cadence of peace might balance its weight on that different fulcrum. Peace, a presence, an energy field more intense than war, might pulse then, stanza by stanza, into the world, each act of living, one of its words, each word a vibration of light, facets of the forming crystal, facets of the forming crystal of peace. So speaking the new reality into place in the work of poetry. So maybe you all can think about kinds of poems you might want to try to write right now, with all the many causes colliding together, and find a poem that maybe educates friends or others, a poem that empowers, helps you to shift from a feeling of despair or discouragement into empowerment, or a poem to encourage others. And so I don't know, Jim and Tanya, if you have any questions or anything else at the end here.
Nope.
I could go. I would wish I had an hour for that.
Well, we'll be doing more of them. No questions. That was excellent. This whole day, and even yesterday when we were just practicing, the way the pieces have flowed together has just fascinated me. What you just presented just beautifully meshed with what we were doing this morning. And boy, when that happens, you know you're in the flow. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I think this is such a great thing, Tanya. I honor you for initiating this. The world needs more of this, because this is what brings hope and encouragement and empowerment.
Yep.
So, and I look forward to seeing the pieces that I missed this morning.
Sounds good. Okay, so I see Tanya's back. What are we doing, Tanya?
Yeah, so the next one is, next speaker is working on a research project that focuses on the intersection of climate resilience and indigenous principles. It is called regenerativefootprint.org. Unfortunately, she was unable to join us live today, but Jim and I got on Zoom with her this week and recorded a very, very inspiring session. I really, really enjoyed being part of that conversation. She's talking about her project that she's now working on. It's called Kinfinity, and it stands for Infinite Kinship with All of Life. And the speaker's name is Amber Bassett. So Jim, would you like to share, or can I, should I share? I've been dropping off a little bit here and there with the internet, so.
Well, let's see. I've got it up on my computer, so it's on my screen. How would I, let's see.
Same thing as you did this morning, just click share screen.
Okay.
And then the two buttons on the bottom, optimize screen sharing for video clip, that should also check the share computer sound, and we should be good to go. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to give this a try, folks. This is not my area of expertise, so let's see what happens.
Thank you for taking this on.
Uh-oh, it's asking for some kind of a password. Good.
I think you just need to hit the play button. Yep. All right. Well, welcome, Amber and Jim. I am really, really excited to be here with the two of you today. Amber, I know you have a wonderful project you're going to talk to us about. It's Kinfinity, and I cannot wait to hear more about the project. First of all, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, getting the chance to share my work and get it out into the world. So thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think it's a very important project that is great for many people to hear about and see how it all interweaves. So yeah, thank you for being here, for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, do you want to jump right in and tell us, first of all, a little bit about you and how you came to the project?
Sure. Yeah. So I came to this work under the research project that I formed over the last decade or so called The Regenerative Footprint. I was sort of looking at ways that I could use my creativity as an artist to sort of respond to the challenges that we face as a species in a way that perhaps a politician or a scientist might not have access to. Really, creativity, non-linear thinking patterns, and thinking in terms of a scale and in solutions that I alone wouldn't be able to implement as a single person. But if I can create, ideas that can be replicable and agile. So that's what I became focused on. And so what I did is I sort of looked at the patterns in our economic systems as well as our social systems and seeing what was emergent and what was happening. And eventually I came up with this old but new economic framework based on, taking money off of a pedestal and putting it in with other forms of mutually recognized value and creating the capacity for us to be able to circulate resources, ideas, wealth, energy, in such a way that we're stewarding it. It's a conscious choice. It's no longer being in circulation with scarcity or oppression or marginalization, but that it's possible to circulate these things as an act of care and radical inclusion. Radical inclusion to me means any sort of happening that creates a space that disintegrates the previous systems of harm because of an equal distribution of power and the bringing in of communication and decision-making as distributed into coherent communities. So anyways, Kinfinity is the project that I came up with. Kinfinity means infinite kinship with all life. And it's really an education initiative program that I came up with instead of looking at what there things like racism and things like taking the planet for granted at the core level. And I believe that the way to do this disruption, this beneficial disruption, is with education. So Kinfinity is this notion of how do we adapt in such a way that we can use these indigenous principles and really live up to them, live up to these indigenous principles of to live for 7 generations without harm. And what does that look like? So it's creating an environment that can hold space for counsel and compassionate organizational processes. And you sort of see it like a kind of like a bit like an onion or a succulent, that there are layers to it. And at the center of it is, our elders, elderly female leaders and elderly male leaders, equal amounts of them, making decisions that is going to benefit the tribe, benefit that local community. And outside of this is the smallest,
Amber, I think your sound may have just dropped. I'm not sure for what reason. Might just be internet connection.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you well. Yes.
Great. I don't know which part I dropped out of, but so I was discussing like basically Kinfinity and how it might work as a structure, which is to say that I think it would probably work with a community or of a council, really, of evenly distributed men and women that are elders making decisions that benefit the whole. And then beyond that, the smallest age group to the medium to the oldest age groups. The campus or the environment is very much immersive into art and animism. And how to make that happen is to create an outer layer where vetted artists, so artists that have had a long background check on the outside, are able to create workshops and create these environments for education to transpire in a way that perhaps hasn't been done, in a way that is engaging with our somatic understanding of self, let's say. And what I mean by that, like as a specific example, is, I want to see not only just language arts and art, but movement arts and culinary arts and martial arts and fiber arts, and how we can take care of ourselves as an art, compassion as an art, that these things can be brought into a conversation of practice and care. Anyways, so this outer rim beyond the eldest age group is of artists. So it's spaces where artists can hold workshops for the typical age group of seniors and juniors. And it works kind of like peer-to-peer tiers. So they learn something, and then in order to pass that workshop, they have to pay it forward to the sophomores. So it's like the one age group inward. And once they've had something fun going on as some sort of process that they're able to create out of that, they can then share that with the other most in ring, so that the middle schoolers, let's say, so that they rely on each other as a kind of family to support one another in play as well as learning, whether we're talking about, whatever subject it is. And this is very experimental, and I'm not suggesting that it be only one random experimental form of education, but rather a council of co-creative educational processes, so that educators, Skillshare facilitators, tutors, teachers, parents, and students all are participants in this active co-creating their education. And largely, administration does not play a role in that. And that's on purpose. Because from what I understand, the administration often will receive the bulk of benefit without being in direct contact with those that they're supposed to be benefiting, which is the student. And there's a big disconnect, I believe, in that process. So just to have more immediacy and agility in the process of learning, so that, lobbying for books is not even a thing on the conversation on the table for educational publishing. Anyways, but so having this outside layer of artists that support not only the environment of the school, but Skillshare to transpire between the students, whether we're talking about permaculture or culinary arts or writing, whatever it is. They are compensated by having extended environments beyond that are their studios, that are their galleries, that are their gift shops. And so out of that, people who are wanting to apprenticeship or take classes for adults can do so at a night course kind of environment. And then what they make out of that, let's say they're not able to pay for tuition for a workshop, they can do a trade. They can invest their time learning how to make preserves, or learning how to loom something or sew. and learning how to make something that would then be sold in these gift shop areas that fund the school. So it's its own self-sustaining system. And I think for that would make it the closest thing to a benefit corporation, not necessarily a nonprofit, because it's created in such a way that the community can sustain the education process, so that you're not you're not relying on taxing a tax base based on housing income, housing values to dictate the quality of education. So you're looking at what are all the pieces that are participating or that are having a profound impact on disparity and gentrification, and how can we create communities where we can take care of ourselves, because artists, believe it or not, we've been almost inadvertently participating in gentrification. We'll bring heat to an area, and then the housing will go up in value, and then the demand will go up in value, and then the artists, and typically POC like me, get marginalized out. So how do we figure this out and pay homage to all the artists that have had to endure, and people who have had to endure that structure? Because if it exists by a structure to marginalize people, it can exist by a structure to create co-arising, to create co-empowerment. The same can be true for the opposite structure. So anyways, I can just talk on this forever, but yeah.
Well, you are welcome to. It is fascinating listening to you describe this project, for sure. And is this a school that's already exists? Is this already incorporated somewhere?
No, it is not. It's something that so recently I submitted this project concept to the Buckminster Fuller Institute, and under their design studio, which is to find a parallel between art and stewardship. I love Buckminster Fuller, and I've been passionate about his design principles of, how do we make, humanity work for 100% of us without any harm being done or to the disadvantage of anyone? How do we thrive? So anyways, that's been a new development just in the last couple of weeks that I've been able to say something is happening, something is coming in terms of its development, but it is not a location presently. What it is primarily, it is a replicable concept. So this means that any school district could say, once they saw it modeled, perhaps, like, we want to see this, we want to, adapt this model to what we're doing, and they can do that, but there are stipulations of usage. So we can get into that, but we want to, so where we get into the weeds of that, or where there's friction, perhaps, right off the bat, is that I'm seeing is food systems. So we want to eliminate food deserts. We want to see environments where the kids are growing their own food for the school, where they're cooking, the advanced students are cooking and doing prep for the school. And, even beyond that, for people who are food insecure. So packaged lunches to go home or over the weekend, for kids who they're not making it. They are not making it. They're having to take their, get food elsewhere, and this is the fault of the economic system that we're in. That's a whole rabbit hole that we can go into. I could just pull one snippet in that minimum wage was developed 100 years ago or so for high school age students to make a little bit of extra earning money over the summer. That's all that it was made for. It was never meant for sustaining a wage. So that alone kind of gives you a concept or an example of what we're facing. Anyways, I kind of went on a tangent, but.
Hey, Amber, can I ask you a couple of things? Because this is fascinating. You're covering so many different points.
I think you're totally right. The fact that we've allowed money to become the controlling factor of our lives globally has really stopped us from evolving. And I also feel that one of the big things to get back to some sort of balance is to allow the circle to come forth again, as you were talking about, a council. As a matter of fact, it's interesting because the piece right behind you was kind of depicting what you were saying. There it is, a circle surrounding all the other diverse figures. So that circle of council becomes really important and allows us to get back into some sort of balance. But we have to change all the systems. And the big one that I want to ask you about is we can do this. We're doing it now. To make changes, we need action and activism. But for the changes to become permanent, we need education. And I've found that in every field that I've worked in. What do you think? Can we do this without the education?
No, not without it, no. And that was the huge criticism by Socrates of democracy, government, was there was no apparatus of education in place to ensure its survival. And we've proven that to be true in this country specifically. But no, I don't think because we have this notion when we say education, like you might have a different idea of what that means, and I might have a different idea of what that means, and so might the next person. It's almost like I want to rip it apart and look at the pieces of what is, and really like just enter into a space of vulnerability and not knowing and curiosity, and go back to that part of me where I was engaged in play. And I think that Reggio Emilio got this right in terms of like advanced provocation or provocation with children, where you show them textures and shapes and colors and marbles versus sticks, and you're playing with your shadow, and you're getting kids engaged with their environment. And then from there you can build up into colors and numbers and letters, and from there it grows like a ball or like a flame. But it's this fire that you get going of curiosity, right? But you keep it going. You keep the flame stoked consistently, and the education happens on its own. So when I want to be engaged in the process of education, it must be out of genuine curiosity, which is innately joyful at its core. And for some people, that's going to look different. Thought in terms of food or in terms of movement and dance, that's kinetic thought. That's thought that we see when people are thinking and with their bodies. So yeah, but I think it will take some education to sort of unpack and deconstruct what has been, but not to say that we should only be in our minds. I think that we'll need to have, what His Holiness Dalai Lama says, we have to have an open mind and a warm heart. It's that combination of the two that will be absolutely necessary for this transition or initiation out of the Anthropocene, I guess.
Can I ask one more question, Tanya?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
I'm really curious about this one too. Chief Charles and I are going to do a session on Saturday about art and how art has contributed to various movements. And we were going to look back, because we're both a couple old suckers. We were going to look back at the 60s when we were young and involved in activism and change and marching with Dr. King and so forth and so on. We had a lot of artists involved, singers and performing artists and dancers and sculptors. I don't see that this time around. Am I looking in the wrong places? Is it not happening, or is it being intentionally ignored? What do you think?
Oh goodness, I have a lot of thoughts and ideas on that and why that is, but that gets into the territory of prophecy. I don't know if that's something you're open to or willing. It's just you have to know that that's where it's coming from.
Yep.
What I've heard and what resonates with me is that the spirits on Turtle Island that were decimated, the indigenous spirits that were decimated, reincarnated, what they say, as the children of the white eyes. So the generation that you would call the 60s was the first wave of that incarnation. We have the environmental movement because of you guys. That was necessary. It was absolutely necessary. I would say that the other waves might differ, or the other coming incarnations might differ. Maybe they might be more engaged in intuitive arts. Maybe they're more about technology. Because right now our technology it's a reflection of our consciousness now. But when our consciousness is always evolving, because ideas are always evolving. The human heart is always evolving, the human spirit. But I think once we see technology begin to become in service to the protection of nature in whatever way it can at this time, that the skills that were developed and garnered by those second and third generations, you'll start to see why that makes sense. That's sort of my vague.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I will bring that into what we have to say on Saturday, because you're absolutely right. And I haven't really thought about it that way, but that makes total sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm really inspired by the exchange aspect of all this and how it all interacts together in your project, and also by the piece of having children really immersed in arts, because every time I hear about schools and there are cuts for the arts, that's the first thing that tends to get cut, and it just makes me want to cry, because I think, well, that is what is needed though to spark that curiosity you were speaking about, right? That's what's needed to get minds thinking and to get minds like juiced up and ready to evolve and produce isn't the word, evolve and move into new directions. I think arts are so incredibly important for that. And it's just always heartbreaking to see when that is the first thing that gets cut somewhere, because it's like, oh man, it's just so the wrong approach in my personal opinion, right? So I love hearing about that aspect of your project.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a very dangerous thing to do, to cut the arts, in my opinion, because when you put the brain on a pedestal in a learning environment and you have bullying going on, which is most schools have bullying going on, it's almost like telling the child, you only matter in this way. This is the only way that you matter. And I think that something can shut down emotionally, especially if there's no play. And there's a great TED Talk on the decline of play by Peter Gray. And equally, I love the one by Ken Robinson on education paradigms. But it really breaks down like the necessity for play and the necessity really for creativity to flourish rather than shut down. I think when you have things like, graffiti that are happening on buildings, it's just creativity that is going only in one direction, unhoned. And that might be, unfair to say, and it is unfair to say in some regard, because I have seen amazing graffiti where it's not just tagging, where it's messy, but when it's very beautiful. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the nuances of culture and how it developed. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's a seed there. And instead of creating punitive action around it, nourish it, put it in the right direction, give them some sort of entrepreneurial way to express that, and in a way that supports their peers as well, or supports them in a future small business. It's time to stop shutting kids down. It's time to really cut the school to prison pipeline. And the way that we neglect arts is how that transpires.
And that comes back, I think, once again to money. You rarely see them cut the big sports parts of schools because they generate money. But the arts get the immediate X, absolutely. And I taught creative writing, one of the things I taught at university, and those classes were always cut as soon as there was any gap in funding. I wasn't allowed to teach those courses, but I could teach the business courses. That was fine. So yeah, it's once, I think all of our systems need to change. And I think art's a big leader in that because that helps us envision what can this look like.
Yeah. Artists, we hold vision all the time. We hold inspiration all the time. And then we weave it into expression. We weave it into being. And our communication is what outpictures as that art. So you have inspiration, and then it expresses. And when it is perceived by someone, it grounds like lightning. This is what I've been told and what really resonates with me. It's a dynamic. Think of it like electricity in the sky wanting to ground. You have inspiration, but it's incomplete. It has to be expressed. And when somebody else is inspired by it, it grounds. It's a dynamic. So artists don't necessarily exist separate of the ecology of their communities or the audience that needs to drink that in. I think that when it comes to economics, that by having so much interdependence, by having an embracing of not only eco-literacy and experiences of being with nature, but relying on each other to such a degree of a complete interdependence and interplay of compassion, that it's as if each person, whether it's a parent or a Skillshare facilitator or a student, each of them is like a reed, in a basket. And every single reed as it is woven in matters. It is essential. Not every single one of them is important, but each one is essential. And so what inspires me about that is, the dollar could fall and it wouldn't matter because you would have people who got each other's backs. They love and support each other, regardless of the institution or whoever made that possible. So it's a program that's meant to be adapting and agile, but what is at its core is interdependence and compassion. And that concept of the reed of each one of us mattering, not just the doctors and the lawyers and the politicians, but, storytellers.
Yeah, I think that is so incredibly important for humans to get, that this is really what we need, this interconnectedness, interdependence, and to get back to that relying on one another, because we've really so moved away from that in the disconnect of nature, in the disconnect of self, in the disconnect of each other. And this is just wonderful to see that moving in that direction, because I do think that is where we all need to move going forward to be able to create a sustainable environment and a healthy environment for all of us. And I love that it starts on that this is a school environment, but it involves all generations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need all hands on deck.
Yeah. And we are almost at time. Jim, do you have another comment or question for Amber at this point?
I don't think so. This has been, this has been an amazing piece, which I think is going to serve a lot of people really well. I know I've learned a lot, and when I walk away feeling I've learned a lot, I feel like my day was worthwhile. So I thank Amber for that. And Amber did just say we need all hands on deck. And I think she's absolutely right. We also need to remember we need all hearts on deck. We need that compassion. We need that caring. And all too many places we've lost that, especially in our supposed leaders around the globe. So if art can help relight that fire, then that alone is a great reason for it to exist and grow.
Yeah. I think art can be an extended hand amidst pointed fingers. It's an invitation into vision, into mutually co-visioning in such a way to disintegrate fear and to build on our co-rising.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. And I think the last thing I would want to share is the concept of the council at the center. I think I maybe forgot to mention the fire at the center. Tim McCartney talks about the children's fire, but there would need to be a small symbolic fire held at the center of council. This comes from tribes across Turtle Island, otherwise known as America. But this fire is ancient, and it's the concept of to live for 7 generations without harm. So ancient peoples here, they ask the question of how shall we govern ourselves? And they looked to nature and found the answer, in the sense that all throughout nature, all the species, they value their young above all else. And so they created a small fire that represented the life and vitality of all children, not just children of a tribe, but all children, and that they would never make any decision that would go against the children's fire, that it would always honor their thriving, their vitality and safety. So yeah, to have our decision making and how we hold each other and how we learn from each other, to have the care for 7 generations and beyond be embedded and imbued into that process. Yeah, that's our ability to inherit the love that was extended to us, is to pay it, continuing to pay it forward.
Yeah, thank you, Amber. That was beautiful. I just so appreciate you taking the time to come on here today and to have this conversation with us about your project. It sounds wonderful. If there's any way we can help, or once if there's any way we can let people know how to get involved, please let us know. Please keep us in the loop. This is an incredibly important project, and I'm so looking forward to seeing that concept take hold and be implemented.
Is there a way for people to contact you, Amber, that you want to put out there?
Yeah, I have a website called regenerativefootprint.org. And regeneration it's an upcoming meme, but it's necessary to also look at it through an old lens too. It's something that ancient cultures have been engaged in for a long time as well. So
regenerativefootprint.com.
.org.
.org. Okay, yeah. Good.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We so appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. Thank you, Amber.
Okay. Have a good one. Thank you.
You too. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that, Jim. It looks like my internet's a little more stable at this point now. I'm very happy about that. I am just going to share really briefly some photos Amber sent in as well for everyone to take a look at. And I don't think that's large. This is the first one, and she said it's an indigenous playground rainbow path in her native language, Chumash. And if I butchered that, and Jim, you know that, please correct me. And she's saying there's a cave painting class near the egret. And then I do have 2 more photos of hers to share. This one. This one is upcycled materials regalia to explore animals and plants through a lens of movement, play, and empathy. And the last one. This is so beautiful. I'm so glad she sent those in. It's wonderful to share. And I might have just messed up the messages. The last one is an installation of Children's Fire, or Life for 7 Generations Without Harm. I'm not sure if I just switched to message. Yes, and I see that our last speaker has just joined us just now. We're going to go chat with him in just a moment, but before we get started, our next segment is going to be on water, and it's going to focus a little more on Australia, because we've been very US heavy here this morning, which is great, because I think most of participants today have been from here. But I figured since we go into the afternoon, some of our Australian friends might be on, and it might be really fun and great and interesting, not only for them, but also for us here in the US, to expand our horizons a little bit and learn more about the situation there. To start out, I am sharing a song that was submitted as part of the project leading up to this event. And it's a song on water that an Australian songwriter and singer recorded. It is called Sacred Land, Sacred Water. He did originally write it for Standing Rock, but water really is a universal topic. So I thought we'd start out with the song, and then we'll move over into the conversation. I have too many things open. The song is not showing up. Just 1 second, bear with me. Here we go.
White man come, drop his anchor, greed is our heavy hand, scars of sorrow and destruction running through our ancient land. Tell the story of the pale face and his glory, of the riches he is making from the tall oak he is taking. Sacred land, sacred water, sacred land, sacred water. Sacred land, sacred water, flowing deep inside of me. We're the sons, we are the daughters of Great Spirit roaming free. Sacred land, sacred water, sacred land, sacred water. Sacred land, sacred water, sacred land, sacred water. sky and from the sea. There's a cry, it is our mother asking us to set her free. Join us now, listen to the ancient ones, protector spirits of the land needing love. Join us now, listen to the ancient ones, protector spirits of the land needing love. Sacred land, sacred water flowing deep inside of me. We're the sons, we are the daughters of Great Spirit roaming free. We're the sons, we are the daughters of Great Spirit roaming free. Sacred land, sacred water. 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 Sacred land, sacred water.
Wow, so that was Bram Linden Tree from Australia, songwriter and singer with this beautiful song. And now I would like to welcome Bruce. Bruce Shillingsworth has agreed to be here on with us and share about that topic in Australia. Welcome, Bruce. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, it's morning here in Australia, so good morning to everyone. Good to see you all and connecting up again. Can you hear me? Look, I want to first acknowledge the land in which I am in the meeting today, the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I extend my acknowledgement to our elders, both past, present and emerging, for they are the memories, tradition and the apes for Aboriginal Australia. I'd just like to acknowledge my brothers and sisters from across the waters. It's a coming together of the spirit of all people. And I think it's time that we unite. I'm a Murawari Budgety man. My mother's from the Budgety Nation of the Paru River. My father's a Murawari man, which is off the Culgo. Two great nations. 500 different nations across Australia. I'd like to acknowledge them in the land in which they belong and their sacred lands, the rivers, the waterways, Mother Earth. So I pay my respects. But I think water is a big issue. Water is life. Water gives us life. Our rivers, over the last 10 years, especially the Murray-Darling River, which is Australia's third biggest river, has been dry, has been destroyed. Destruction that we see First Nation people with our rivers have devastated not just our lives, but people that lives along the river. Last week, there was an almond farm They've been sold to an American company for $98 million. So we don't know what's going to happen to the river, the waterway. I mean, the water, the rivers in with that selling of the land. So I think we're up against a lot of powerful, leaders of governments that are making decisions in this country. So we're up against a lot of corruption, greed, capitalism that's killing our rivers, killing our country. When First Nation voices have been ignored, First Nation decision-making has been ignored. International law has been violated. Our Constitution has been violated, and the rights of First Nation people have been violated. So I think the fights continue, but it's about us now coming together right across the world to put together a document. I think you guys have been talking about the World Water Law, and I think that's need to be introduced here to this country. We need to start rolling that out, get organisations, get community involved, get them to sign into it. And I think that's our only answer. It has to be a global, something global. Because our government is, like I said, it's ignoring the laws that have been placed in our, in this country. So look, going back to our rivers, our First Nation people have been living on the rivers for thousands of years, 60,000 plus years. Over the last 230 years, 250 years, we see the destruction of our rivers, our land and our environment. So First Nation people right across Australia are now standing up, fighting to protect Mother Earth, protect our rivers and waterways, which is a vital source that sustained us for thousands of years. But I think it's not a problem here, but it's right across the world now. The taking of land, the buying up of land by big corporates, and they're controlling our rivers and our waterways and the land. And I think as grassroots people need to start to, fight for that and get it back to protect it for our future generation.
Thank you, Bruce, for sharing with us what's happening there and what needs to happen going forward. Our questions, we've been talking a little bit about the involvements of arts today in all kinds of social justice issues, and water for sure is a social justice issue. If we don't have water, I mean, it's such a basic right? If we don't have access to water or clean water, there are so many disadvantages, health issues, all kinds of things that trickle down from not having water. Have you been using arts in any way to raise awareness or to raise money or for any kind of projects in any way? I'd love to hear about that if that's been a topic for you.
Look, arts is a very, 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 very important thing. Arts bring people together, just like sports. I mean, I'm an artist myself. I'm a dancer, storyteller. So over the last couple of years, I've been using my art. I paint to tell stories of the river. I had a few exhibitions here in Sydney. Just bringing people together and showing them my artwork about the rivers, and now the river's so important, and it's a good way of educating people. There's lots and lots of artists here in Sydney, right across Australia, that love to sit and tell the story and talk about our artwork. And music, over the last couple of weeks and months, a lot of artists singing songs about our rivers. We've got some wonderful singers out there, and they're singing about Mother Earth, about environment, and mainly about the rivers. Storytelling. I mean, through our storytelling, First Nation people have been telling these stories for a long, long time, and passing down of those traditional knowledge and to those traditional stories that relates to our country, to relates to the land, to the rivers and everything we see. That's so important. But I think through the artwork, doing my artwork, the painting, I do a lot of stuff in acrylic, and now I'm starting some big oil painting. I'm looking at some major big galleries here in Sydney so I can, put that work up there. They've just entered a piece in the one of the big exhibition here, the Archibald in Sydney, which is very huge, and they've introduced one of the artworks of me on the river. So yeah, that's gone nationally. So it's great to see those things happening.
Yeah, I like what you said about the art unites and brings us together. We've been having some conversations about that this morning as well, and especially one of the projects that was shared about the Cities of Peace project was all about bringing nations together and people from all different places. So I think you're right on with that.
And a lot of filmmaking, as happening. We had the doco of When the River Runs Dry. There are lots of small docos that people are making, getting that out there through media, social media, and it's great.
It is. I would agree in that it's just a great way to raise awareness, because so many things can be so easily expressed by just an image in a way that you cannot necessarily put, well, let me just put it for me, I can't put it into words, and an image can really, really, really touch you very deeply and impact change in people. And
I think a lot of the major fundraisers, we're doing, not just here in Australia, but right nationally, selling of T-shirts, the Yamagana Barker, Save Our Rivers on. T-shirts would save our rivers. That's important too, and that's, creates a lot of fundraising to help us build the awareness of what's happening with our environment.
Yeah, great. It's a great means to use for fundraising for sure. Just wanted to check in. Jim, did you have any questions, comments at this point?
No, I'm always fascinated when I listen to Bruce. He's touched on storytelling, and we haven't talked too much about that today. And storytelling, I think, is one of the most critical things that we need right now. We did a little bit when Chief Charles was on. We talked a little bit about how a lot of indigenous art is not recorded, but it's done out of the heart and off the cuff. I don't know, anything more on that, Bruce, that you want to share? I know you're an excellent storyteller. I've heard it by so many.
Look, I think, Jim, a lot of our ancient stories, it's about passing down of knowledge and passing down of that wisdom. It's educational for our younger generation and their future generation. It's a passing down. But I think there's an element in those stories that are truthful and meaningful for our children today. So I think today we've got to mix that with our modern day storytelling. So a lot of those stories still relates to us today. So we've got to modify that and make it, in like modern society, so modern stories now. That's what we're creating. So we're keeping the past, the present, and the future still continuing. The journey still continuing. And I think it's a way of educating non-Indigenous people about our stories, right across the world. And that's why it's so important, sitting around the campfire, sitting in nature, sitting on the riverbank. Our big classroom. The classroom is not the four walls. The classroom is the old, out there. And that's what we need to get out there, get out in the open, get out in Mother Nature and start educating people about that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I meant to bring this up with Charles, and we didn't get time. But as I traveled around and sat with my teachers and lived with them, and was taught so many stories, most of them always said, and Jim, make sure when you tell these stories later, which you'll need to, that you remind people you were given permission to tell these stories. So it's, we have to use care when we do that. So there's some stories I've been told and things I've been taught that I was told not to share, and I don't. But there's others I think we need to. If I hear Bruce tell an amazing story, I should be able to go tell a group of students that I'm talking to, and maybe they'll come and find Bruce too. But how do you feel about that? When does it stop being stealing a story versus sharing a story?
Well, it's like you said, Jim, there's a lot of our stories are sacred. We can't, those stories were not to be passed down. Men have their stories and women have their stories.
Mm-hmm.
So look, I'm a teacher. I work for the Department of Education. I teach in 230 schools here in Sydney. One of the main reasons why, and I think that my storytelling, my passing down of knowledge to our children, all children from all backgrounds, I believe by me passing down the stories onto our non-Indigenous children as well, they will then pass down that story to the next generation and the following generation. And that's one of my big, what I see and what I do. And I think bringing people in, introducing them into the education system with that wisdom and knowledge, and then passing that on to the next generation of children for them to pass it on. I think that's the most important thing that I see. And it's, it's not just through our stories, but it comes down through our dance, through the music, through all that stuff. And I think that's what the world is looking for today. And that's what we've got to keep going and continue doing.
Yeah, great. That's exactly how I feel. Thank you, but you put it much better. And yeah, again, all these pieces tie together. We talked about this earlier. You mentioned the water and the World Water Law. Absolutely, so critical. That also ties in with art. That also ties in with the peace work a lot of us are doing. And when we tell the stories, I was always afraid. I remember sitting with one of my Mayan teachers down in Belize, and he was teaching me some stories, and I was really scared. I was even younger and dumber than I am now. And I said, but I'm never going to remember these perfectly. I finally fessed up after about a week of sitting with him. And he just laughed and he said, no. Stories are living things. You have the story right, but if a couple little things change, they were meant to. So that gave me comfort. I think I've always remembered the stories as best I can. But if I brought in an eagle instead of a wolf, I'm not sure that it really matters.
And I think, Jim, it's that space. And with the corroboree, with the corroboree last year, I took a convoy of 3,000 people out to the river and actually sit on the river and see the empty riverbeds. And it's that space there then you start to talk about, and you get the feeling of the spirit, in Mother Earth, where you won't get it here in the city. I mean, that's what we've got to experience as well. We've got to get out of our comfort zone. We've got to get out of, what we're all tangled up in this concrete jungle. So we've got to go to the space where the spirit lives and the spirit is alive. And we've got to introduce ourselves, and we've got to come into their realm. And I believe that's the proper learning. And that's what we need to do.
I love that, the space, yes. Thank you. That's awesome. And we are going to be doing more of this. A couple of folks were sending me messages. First of all, yes, we are recording everything. And everything from this morning was also recorded, so they'll be moved out later. And there were some great things this morning as well. But then we're also, I think the next thing up is sometime in September. It's mid-September. I'll get dates. And I put my email there. Anyone who wants to be on White Otter Academy, which we sponsor a lot of these things, just drop me your email and I'll put you on there so we keep you updated. But there is a huge peace convergence thing coming up, and I will be hosting one of the sessions. So we're going to, ours is going to be the 4 elements, and I'm doing it with another person who's part of the convergence, and possibly Maya. We haven't talked yet, but we usually share these things. And we will hear some other great speakers, and some of these folks are here today. Like, I'm hoping Bruce can come on again, because the 4 elements is right in his, I mean, right up, he knows a ton about. All these things are connecting together, and they're critical. To me, it's to, somebody talked, maybe it was Miss Bassett, but providing for the 7 generations. That's the critical thing right now. We're right at that time of shift and change, and we have to create new, and that's what I'm trying to focus on, and I know many of you are. I know Bruce definitely is. So I'm sorry for that commercial, Bruce, but I wanted people to hear that so they could find other things. So what else do we need to hear, Bruce? What else do you need to share with us?
Yeah, well, look, if we look around at ourselves and, you know, the environment today, it's not, you know, it's all this, you know, we're all in upheaval. So I think we need to bring ourselves down, bring ourselves back down to Mother Earth. I mean, we've got to start, you know, protecting all our living creatures. Our little children are important, not just First Nation children, but all children. And I think they will take us on, they'll take us into the future. I think we need to work with that, you know, educating our younger ones now. Our younger ones is our next leaders. They're the ones who'll take us on. But I think we need to guide them and direct them in a lot of, you know, our elders need to, you know, guide them and direct them in what they do. Their special knowledge, ancient knowledge and wisdom are very, 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 you know, priceless at the moment. And we need that needs to be, you know, revealed and passed down. And I think it's the coming together of all people. Our little gathering here now, meeting together, is so important. It empowers all of us. And it's also a message that will empower our communities and the world we live in. Look, we just got to keep doing what we're doing. Late September, I'll be going out on the rivers planting trees. There's a group of people that wants to come out with me and plant trees along the river. We've got to put nature back the way it was. If we want to see the natural cycles happen again, the bringing of the rain, all that, we've got to start putting the trees back. As you know, we had the bushfires here late last year. So we need to help, you know, nature regenerate and start planting stuff back to get it back to normal again. It's a lot of work for us, but I think there's a lot of people out there that want to support us. And lots of people are getting behind us now. We just got to, you know, need our leaders to support us in what we do. But we just got to keep chipping away, and I think we'll get there. That, you know, that's important.
Yeah, I agree. And with the fires we have going on here now, we're going to be planting a lot of trees too. I think our friend Darwin is still on. Darwin is doing, I believe, a lot of tree planting in Africa. Darwin, are you still around? Oh, well, I'm pretty sure he's still here. Maybe he'll find the button. But anyway, Darwin is here from Africa, and he has led a lot of retreeing efforts as well. So it's fascinating the way these things keep linking up. You know, we could never do this before, Bruce. When we sat around fires and there was 20 of us, 30 of us, and it was beautiful, and I love it. But now look at what we can do. I mean, just in this small group, we're global.
Well, I was on social media. I said, I said I was going out planting trees. Now I've got 1,000 people that want to come.
Yes, exactly. That's it. And now you're wondering, what the hell am I going to do with them?
Well, that's a great problem to have.
It is.
Better than the other way around.
Yep. Tell them to make sure they bring their own trees. Thank you, Bruce. Brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you, Bruce. I really, really always so enjoy listening to you because you have such deep wisdom and you are so passionate about your work and about what you do and about the environment. And I do have one personal question, if that's okay, to just see, because your passion is something that really just jumped out at me right away from the get-go, and your determination and your commitment. And what I'm curious about is, does your art in any way help fuel that, or what brings that to life?
Well, through the arts, I think it's our main message is to get out there through our artwork. A lot of people want to know, and the Aboriginal art is getting very, very popular. Its art is very important. I mean, here in the city, we got to bring all that stuff from our country, off our land. The only way to do it is we paint it through our, paint the pictures through our artwork and then explain it here in Sydney. Get exhibition, but also helps us through our fundraising stuff as well. We're working as educating people, educating non-Indigenous people. So I think it's really great. I mean, art has taken off. My artwork is starting to get popular. I mean, people want to buy. The quicker I do them, the quicker they're gone. But it's a great message. That's the way we want to get that message out there. It's a great tool to get that information to people.
Yeah, I so agree. Art is just incredibly impactful and so helpful in delivering messages.
Yeah, it's a great way of connecting people. I mean, look, there's hundreds of people here in Sydney. We want to form a big group here, a group of artists for change. That's in the pipeline, and that's what we want to do. And I think it'll happen. So lots of great artists here in Sydney and all around the world. I think we've got to bring it together and start making that happen.
That's wonderful. So that's a project you're working on already. What does that entail?
Well, it's just all different artists from all over Sydney come together, and we sit down. We talk about how can we change our environment. Not just through art, but through all aspects of arts. At the moment they talk about these great statues and Black Lives Matter thing that's going on. We want to look at positive things, creating a more peaceful, safe environment by through our artwork. Putting great statues up, of making great pictures, and putting it on surfaces or buildings right across Sydney. Send that big message, positive message. We can create that, and that's what we want to do. You there?
Whoops, she froze again.
Froze, yes, she froze.
I know. Sometimes when we talk to her, we just freeze her up. Oh, she's back.
Well, I know. I didn't hypnotize her, did I?
You did it, Bruce.
Maybe a little bit. So obviously I missed the last little bit, but thank you so much for.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great stuff, getting our artwork in the National Gallery. I mean, getting it out there through visual. I mean, our Opera House here in Sydney. We want to, put all our artwork, reflect all our artwork on the Opera House, our major, buildings like that, and just to, send the message. And I think that's important. Getting our shires, our councillors, our representatives, all those PMs on board, and say this is what we want to create. There's a huge musical concert that we want to hold here in Sydney next year, bringing together all the bands. Band for the Barker, bands for the river. I mean, that's going to be massive. So what we want to do is create a really big noise, I mean, to wake this government up. And the only way we do it, we put a huge gathering, musical fundraiser. That's in the pipeline too as well. So, there's a lot of things organised.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love hearing about that. That's fantastic. Well, I'm grateful that you took the time to come here. I know it's really early in the morning in Australia, so thank you so much for getting up for us and sharing your message with us, because I know that it's inspiring to hear you, no matter what time of day. So I just always appreciate hearing you. You're so real and so wise, and yeah, filled with gratitude for you being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank for everyone contributing. Do you want me to come back on another side, or Jim, did you want me to come back?
I'll be in touch. We're setting it up now. I don't have exact dates and times. It'll be in about 2.5 weeks.
Okay, well, you'll let me know, mate.
Yes, sir. I will.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, brother.
Thank
All
you
right.
for sharing. Yeah. All right. Well, that was an inspiring afternoon. I sure got a lot out of it. It's so, wow. I mean, it was very impactful for me. And I just would love to hear if anyone would like to share anything, would like to ask any questions. I think we do have a moment. I know well, we do have a moment. I'm saying we're a little over time, but if you feel like staying on and you would like to ask questions, we're here. We would love to have a bit of a chat to sort of just wrap up this afternoon. So feel free to just unmute yourself if there is anything you would like to ask or comment on. Jim, do you have something before?
Yeah, first of all, don't worry about the time. Charles said he had to go because he's doing something with his wife. But he just reminded us that we got a lot of indigenous people with us today. So we're on Indian time, according to Charles. So we'll just go until we're done.
Sounds good to me.
I just wanted to jump in and say, really, poetry is another form of storytelling, and how I didn't emphasize that so much, except about, using it to tell a new story into an empowerment, but very much it's like a concentrated storytelling. And a teacher helped me a while back to get that, as a poet, I'm a storyteller. But I was very touched listening to, Bruce always inspires me so much, but Amber, what a poet she is, just in the way she speaks. She used these beautiful images. She talked about rubbing the sticks of curiosity to light the fire, and just everything that she was saying. And I'm so touched by that. So yeah, this was very inspiring. I just want to thank both of you, Jim and Tanya, for putting this together. And I hope it's the beginning of more arts.
Oh, yeah.
And so, listen, arts and the environment and other topics and other ways that art can support the transformation we want to see in the world. So thank you.
I'm just an assistant today. I love that. It's great. So if anything goes wrong, it's up to Tanya, and if it goes right, she gets the credit. And she's cutting in and out. She's been having connection issues all day, so I'm glad that I was recording the second half. Yeah, and you're right, Maya. That's a good thought around poetry, because it certainly is. And again, all these things connect together. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. Thank you, everybody, and all the poetry, the storytelling, and the great photos of the civil rights movement. It was just all amazing. And this is the longest Zoom call I have ever been on. And you just wanted to keep going. Let's have a sleepover party. But anyway, what I wanted to say is there was a woman earlier who, I think her name was Miriam. And she said, oh, but what could I do? What could I do? All this art and all this nice poetry and these Zooms. But in the end, what could I do? What could I do? And that was, her lament or her question. And I really firmly believe that you can't put the cart before the horse type of thing. And the spirituality, for me, has to come first. And then the action follows from that. And I'm certainly not an expert by any means, but I do sort of read a lot of the great religions. And whether it's the Bible or Buddhism or yoga or Hinduism and so on, and I'm not really familiar with the indigenous religions, to be honest with you. So maybe you could tell me if this is true. They all seem to say, you put your inner life and your spirituality first, and you empty yourself, and then you put the world second. So that's what has worked in my life. Like when I've tried to do it the other way around and I'm just only focused on like acting in the world, I might be acting in a way that's not like with my best wisdom. I might be missing something. So I actually find that the meditation, the art, and the spirituality, for me, it all goes together. And then my actions in the world are inspired by that, and I have more clarity. And it might be like, oh, I should call that person, or I should start this mural project, or whatever it is. You know, it might be, oh, get that guy who's, you know, over there, give him an extra big tip because he's wearing a mask and he's serving pizza, you know, whatever it is. So I don't know if anybody has thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. For me, and the way I work and the way I've been taught, it's a combination of those things. And I'm not religious at all. I'm spiritual. Not for me, that's a big distinction. For other people, it's not. But it's a mix of action and spirituality and education and ceremony. And yes, you need to be doing them all. But I've learned by trial and error and by trying to find things desperately because I really wanted to know more, or I wanted a teacher and blah, blah. You don't go looking. You do exactly what you said. You empty out. You become the hollow bone. You allow things to come in and then allow them to find you. And you know what they do? There's the old line, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's exactly what happens. So thank you. That's a great reminder. Good one. Anybody else? I feel bad that Tanya hasn't been able to get back on. We all owe a huge thank you to Tanya. She did all the work on this. I mean, I was there as backup, but that's about it. But she did, I think, finding the people she did and all of us here, and yeah, it was just awesome. Any other words of wisdom, questions, comments? Oh, okay, the folks from Pine Ridge who've been listening via phone and my phone, they wanted to say thank you and they were glad to be part of the circle. And Tanya's not on there either, so she must have lost all connectivity. Are we good?
I would like to say thank you for the work. I think one of the most important things about
Chandra, yeah,
being an activist or an artist is being willing to say yes.
Yes.
Not, you don't really understand how it's all going to come together, but I think something that calls you forth and drives you from the inside, and all the connections just start to sync themselves up, and then all of a sudden the thing that needed to be birthed is birthed. And I'm so grateful for the leaps of faith that everyone takes to create something innovative, to be a change agent. And then in the process we learn, and you know, I learned so much today from the other presenters. And I learned so much about myself and about what motivated things and what keeps me going forward. And it was a very glorious day. Normally I wouldn't be on Zoom this long. I'm with Joyce on this. I'm not a Zoomy Zoom. Right?
Yeah.
I think that now I've learned even from this, that this platform can be so amazing. I mean, like we're from Europe to Australia and West Africa all on one call. And this is going to be even greater. So I'm even appreciating this innovation of a tool to become a mobilizer, a people connector, and a place where we can all grow.
Thank you. And your presentation, I told you how much it moved me yesterday, and it moved me again today. So I really appreciate that. And you're bringing up a really nice point. You know, there's well, I don't have them on. I took them off at lunchtime. The 4 colors of people, we've had them all here today. We had all 4 colors from all 4 corners of the world. We've had men and women, young and old. And that to me is perfect. That's how we need to unite. As we started so many years ago. I remember, okay, so this is just going back to remember, but, and I mentioned it earlier, I think, but I was only maybe 18 when I went out and marched with Dr. King. I was one of maybe 3 or 4 white people I remember in that whole march. Maybe there were a few more, but not that I saw. That's changed. That's really changed. Everybody who's marching now, whether it was those of us who are at Standing Rock, Black Lives Matter folks who are marching now, the women are at, we have mixed groups, so it should be easier to pull us together, I hope, because we're in the same place now. We're in the same heart. Those of us who are alive to this and aware of it, not everybody, obviously. Just watch a convention. Oh, sorry. No political comments. Whoops. So that was an excellent thing to finish with, Chandra. Thank you. Anybody else? Or I'm going to call it in, and once I can get back to Tanya, I'll let her know we finished up.
I'm so filled up, I just can't say something. Yeah. I'm very grateful that I saw and heard all this, and I'm very touched by the poems, by everything. So thanks to all, and I hope Tanya will come back, but if not, thank you, Jim and Tanya, also. It's recorded, so she'll hear.
Oh yeah, she'll hear it.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, no, you're right. And I'm so glad to see younger people like Tanya taking this on, because that is so important now. Some of us are not going to be here that much longer, not long enough to do what needs to be done. So to see some who are younger take on, and just a few days ago, Tanya was asking, and I'll share this because she would anyway. She's like, well, what if nobody shows up? I'm like, don't worry about it. Whoever needs to show up will. If that's one person and they hear something or share something, that's fine. And look at this group we had. We couldn't have handpicked a better group. The way everything just went together. It's like everybody's been working on this for a year. And the reality is it's been about 3 weeks. So that's powerful, really powerful. So thank you again. And I'll thank you for Tanya as well, because I know she would be. And yeah, we'll keep everybody connected. I will continue to send things out via White Otter Academy, and we'll put stuff on Facebook and on and on. Peace to everybody. Oh, geez, one more thank you. We want to thank the ancestors. We want to thank Creator. We want to thank Father Sky and Mother Earth. We want to thank the 4 directions, because they've all been here, as well as the standing people, the trees, and all the animals. All one tribe. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Hi, Irene, my friend Irene, my Zoom friend. Hi, Irene.
Right. Bye.
Bill, so nice to see you. Bye. Bye, everybody.